This story is titled, "She Broke Up With Me After Her Parents Said I'm Not in Her League. Now She's Begging Me Back After My Success and Her Regret." Hey Reddit, I'm 28 years old and grew up in one of the rougher parts of Chicago. My childhood wasn't exactly what you'd call privileged. I was raised by my single mom after my dad went out for smokes one day and never came back. Classic story, right? But my mom, she's an absolute unit of a woman. She worked as an ER nurse during the days and picked up shifts as a waitress at some fancy steakhouse at night. Somehow, despite working two demanding jobs, she still managed to show up at my school events. I'll never understand how she did it all. We never had much growing up, but my mom made sure I never felt poor. She stretched every dollar and made sacrifices I probably still don't fully understand. When I turned 15, I started working at my Uncle Tom's auto shop. He actually tried to talk me out of it. Said I should focus on school instead, but I was tired of seeing my mom working herself to death. I was also sick of wearing thrift store clothes while all my classmates had the latest styles. Plus, I'd always been obsessed with cars anyway. I spent every class doodling car designs in my beaten-up notebooks instead of taking notes. At home, I watched every car modification video I could find on YouTube. Uncle Tom's shop wasn't anything special, just honest work for honest people. But that place became my real education. I started with sweeping floors and organizing tools, but the older mechanics noticed my interest and started teaching me their tricks. By the time I was 16, I could do oil changes blindfolded. At 17, I was helping with complete engine rebuilds. My life changed when this guy rolled in with a clapped-out Shelby GT 500 that other shops had declared hopeless. I saw the potential in it, though. I spent 2 weeks after hours researching forums and trying different fixes until I finally got it purring like new. Word spread fast after that. If you had a performance car needing serious work, Uncle Tom's became the place to go, and I became the guy to ask for. I managed to graduate high school with decent grades, thanks to my mom constantly riding my ass about homework. College wasn't in the cards for me, though. I went to trade school instead and got all my certifications. That's where I met Catherine. Catherine was this rich girl who brought her Audi RS7 to the shop where I was doing my apprenticeship. There was nothing special about the car, just another daddy-bought toy for her 21st birthday. But she was different from the other rich girls I'd encountered. She actually seemed interested when I explained what was wrong with her car. She didn't act disgusted by my grease-stained hands and even laughed at my terrible car puns. We started dating a few weeks later. Looking back now, I was probably just her rebellion against her stuck-up family, like how rich girls sometimes date the bad boy to piss off their parents. Except I wasn't even a bad boy. I was just a working-class guy who was good with cars and had big dreams. The first couple of years were actually amazing. She'd bring me lunch at the shop. Not just any lunch, but fancy stuff from expensive places I'd never try myself. She'd hang out while I worked on projects, asking questions and showing genuine interest. During this time, I started doing side jobs and saving every single penny I earned. I had this vision of opening my own place someday. Not just another repair shop, but a high-end custom garage where people would bring their Ferraris and Lamborghinis for serious custom work. Catherine seemed supportive of my dreams back then. She was always talking about how much she believed in me and my vision. Her family, though. Holy shit. Imagine every stereotype about old money snobs and multiply it by 20. That still wouldn't come close to describing them. Her dad was this big-shot commercial real estate developer who would ask these condescending questions about my little car hobby at family dinners. He'd use that exact phrase, too. Little car hobby. Like I was a kid playing with Hot Wheels instead of a skilled mechanic building a career. Her mom was even worse. She constantly brought up how her friend's kid was doing so well at dental school, or how her niece's husband had just made partner at some prestigious law firm. The comparisons were endless and always aimed at making me feel inadequate. But I kept my cool through it all. I stayed focused on my goals and didn't let their judgment distract me. By the time I was 25, I had built a solid reputation in the Chicago car scene. I was starting to get high-end clients through word of mouth, and I even got featured in a local car magazine for some custom work I did on a classic Aston Martin DB5. Things were really looking up. Catherine and I had been together for 4 years at this point. We had talked about marriage, kids, and our whole future together. I was saving up for a ring, nothing fancy, but it was honest money earned with my own 2 hands. I had this whole plan to propose right after securing the loan for my shop. Then everything went to absolute shit. Catherine's family hosted this fancy charity gala every year for some Save the Whatever Foundation. I usually found excuses to skip these events because nothing made me more uncomfortable than being surrounded by trust fund babies who thought changing their own oil was quirky and adventurous. But this time, Catherine insisted that I be there. She said it was important to her family, which should have been a major red flag that I completely missed. I busted my ass that week to finish a client's McLaren P1 early just so I could make it to the gala. I even bought a new suit. Nothing super fancy, but definitely better than my usual Walmart specials. I spent 3 hours watching YouTube videos to learn how to tie a proper Windsor knot. Looking back, I probably tried too hard, but I really wanted to make Catherine proud. The gala was at this ridiculous mansion outside the city. It had everything: a fountain in the driveway, valet parking, the works. There was an awkward moment when I recognized one of the valets. The dude used to work at Uncle Tom's shop. The place had enough crystal chandeliers to blind a small army. I felt out of place the second I walked in, but I was trying to play it cool. That's when Brandon Wellington III made his grand entrance. This douchebag pulled up in a brand new McLaren 765 LT, the exact model I'd been working on all week, except his was fresh off the showroom floor and had probably never even seen a speck of dust. He walked in wearing what I later found out was a $90,000 suit, some fancy watch that probably cost more than my yearly income, and that typical trust fund baby haircut that screams, "My daddy's lawyers have lawyers." Here's the real kicker. His family owned Wellington Luxury Automobiles, this chain of high-end dealerships across 4 states. The irony was painful because these were the same dealerships that would sometimes send us problem cars they couldn't fix. Catherine's mom practically sprinted across the room to greet him, saying, "Brandon, darling, we didn't know you'd be here." Total bullshit. I found out later they had specifically invited him. The next thing I knew, they were steering Catherine towards him and making sure they were seated together at dinner. I had to sit there and listen to this guy brag about his latest business ventures, all funded by Daddy's money, of course. "Just acquired a new dealership in Indianapolis," he said, swirling his $1,000 wine like he was in some fancy commercial. "Planning to expand into the exotic car market. It's really about understanding the luxury consumer mindset." I almost choked on my weird tiny portion of whatever French dish they were serving. This guy wouldn't know real car work if it bit him in his designer pants. But every time he opened his mouth, Catherine's parents were practically drooling. Her dad kept saying stuff like, "That's the kind of forward thinking the industry needs," and "You really understand the business side of things." The whole time I noticed Catherine getting quieter. Usually, she'd jump in and talk about some of the custom work I'd done and how I was planning to open my own shop. But that night, nothing. She just sat there nodding and laughing at Brandon's terrible jokes about people who still buy American cars. That hurt more than any of the subtle digs about my background. After dinner, they had dancing. I'm not much of a dancer, unless you count the victory dance I do after successfully rebuilding a transmission, but I was trying my best. Then Brandon cut in, all smooth with his ballroom dancing skills that he probably learned at some fancy prep school. Catherine didn't even look back at me as she glided away with him. The rest of the night was pure torture. I had to stand there and watch them dancing, talking, and laughing together while her mother hovered around them like a wedding photographer, taking pictures and making comments about what a handsome couple they made. Meanwhile, I was standing by the bar, drowning my frustration in overpriced drinks that I couldn't even appreciate. On the drive home, Catherine was different, quiet and withdrawn. When I tried to joke about Brandon being a walking stereotype, she didn't laugh like she usually would. Instead, she got defensive. "He's actually really smart about the industry," she said. "Maybe you could learn something about the business side from him." That's when I knew. Deep down, I think I knew right then that we were done. But like an idiot, I ignored it. I kept telling myself she was just impressed by the fancy party and that things would go back to normal once we were back in our regular routine. Over the next few weeks, Catherine started getting more involved with her family's social circle. Suddenly, she was too busy to hang out at the shop. She always had some charity event or social function to attend, and somehow Brandon was always there too. "Just coincidence," she'd say. "Yeah, right. Yeah. The final straw came when I found out she'd been having business lunches with Brandon to discuss investment opportunities for my future shop. Apparently, he was interested in backing local talent. Sure. More like backing me right out of my relationship. It was a Thursday when my life imploded. I remember because I had just finished a complex engine rebuild on a client's Pagani Huayra. I was feeling pretty good about myself. Had grease all over my hands, but a fat check in my pocket. The kind of day that usually meant celebration beers with the guys at the shop. Then Catherine texted, "Can we talk? I'll come by your place after work." Anyone who's ever gotten that text knows exactly what it means. But stupid me actually thought maybe she wanted to apologize for being distant lately. I rushed home, took the fastest shower of my life, and even cleaned up my small apartment above the shop. It wasn't much, but it was mine, paid for with honest work and long hours. She showed up looking like she stepped out of a magazine. Designer everything, hair done perfectly, not a single thing out of place. Meanwhile, my hands still had motor oil under the nails that wouldn't come out no matter how hard I scrubbed. The contrast hit different that day. "I think we need to take a break," she started. Classic opener, right? But then came the real gut punch. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my future. I just sat there on my worn-out couch while she went through her obviously rehearsed speech about how she needed stability, how she was at a point in her life where she needed to think about her future seriously, and how her family had made her realize some things. Then the kicker. She actually had the nerve to say, "Brandon helped me understand what I really want in life. Someone established. Someone who can provide the lifestyle I'm accustomed to." You know what's fucked up? I didn't even get mad. I didn't yell or throw things. I just sat there feeling like someone had ripped my heart out through my throat. 4 years of memories flashed through my mind. All the late nights she spent at the shop with me, all the plans we made, all the times she said she believed in my dreams. "What about the shop?" I asked. "What about everything we planned?" She actually rolled her fucking eyes at me. "Be realistic," she said. "Do you know how much capital it takes to compete with established luxury garages? Brandon says—" I cut her off there. "Brandon says? The guy who's never changed his own oil? That's who you're taking business advice from now?" She got this look on her face like I was some kid who just didn't understand how the real world works. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," she said. "You're so focused on the technical side. You don't understand the business reality. Brandon has connections. He understands the luxury market." I stood up then. Something in me just broke. "Get out," I said. "What?" "Get the fuck out of my apartment. Take your designer bags, your business reality, and your Brandon, and get the fuck out." She looked shocked. She probably expected me to beg, to promise I'd change, to grovel for another chance. Instead, I walked to the door and held it open. She left without another word. 2 days later, 2 fucking days, she was all over Instagram with pictures of her and Brandon at some rooftop restaurant, his arm around her waist, both of them looking like they were shooting a commercial for rich people problems. The caption read, "Sometimes life leads you exactly where you're meant to be." The worst part was the comments. All her rich friends saying stuff like, "OMG, finally you guys are perfect together," and "This is what you deserve, girl." Like our entire relationship was just some embarrassing phase she went through. Then came the real storm. Remember that Pagani I had just finished working on? The owner called me the next day saying the transmission was acting up again. I was so fucked up from the breakup that I must have missed something during reassembly. I had to eat the cost of fixing it, and there went the fat check I was so proud of just days before. More mistakes followed. I started drinking too much and showing up to work late. I lost focus during jobs I would have normally completed with my eyes closed. Uncle Tom tried to talk to me about it, but I wasn't hearing it. Customers started going elsewhere. My savings for the shop were draining fast between lost work and trying to drink away memories of Catherine. I lost 3 more big jobs in 2 weeks. Word gets around fast in the luxury car world. 1 mistake, and your reputation takes a hit. 2 mistakes, and people start looking elsewhere. Uncle Tom tried to help me through it. He's a good dude who kept giving me chances even when I was showing up late, hungover, or both. But after I scratched a client's restored 70 Corvette because I was too drunk to notice a loose wrench on my workbench, he had to make a decision. He pulled me aside one Friday afternoon, pain all over his face. "Listen, kid, I love you like a son, he said. But I can't let you work on cars like this. You're going to hurt yourself or someone else. Take some time. Get your head straight. That night, I drank until I couldn't feel anything anymore. I woke up on my bathroom floor to 3 missed calls from my landlord. Turns out I'd missed 2 months of rent on my apartment above the shop. I had been so messed up that I didn't even notice the late notices piling up. The real kick in the teeth? My savings account was almost empty. 4 years of carefully saving every penny for my dream shop, gone in less than 2 months of self-destruction. Between the botched jobs I had to make right, the drinking, and trying to keep up appearances on the few dates I went on, like that was going to help, I'd burned through almost everything. I had to move back in with my mom at 26. She didn't say anything when I showed up at her door with 2 duffel bags and a box of tools. She just hugged me and said dinner would be ready in an hour. But I saw her crying in the kitchen later that night. That destroyed me, knowing I was making my mom cry after everything she'd sacrificed to raise me right. I started taking any job I could find. I worked at O'Reilly Auto Parts during the day and delivered pizzas at night. But the worst, I had to take a job as a valet at this fancy steakhouse downtown, the same kind of place I used to dream about taking Catherine to once I made it. Then it happened, the moment that really broke me. I'm standing there in my valet uniform, cheap polyester pants, and a red vest that made me look like a rejected Christmas elf. Up pulls this familiar McLaren 765 LT in that specific shade of volcano orange that still haunts my dreams. Out steps Brandon, looking like a GQ model, and then Catherine. She was wearing this red dress that probably cost more than my car, designer everything, and that tennis bracelet Brandon had posted about giving her on Instagram. Yeah, I was still pathetically checking their socials. She saw me. I know she saw me. But she looked right through me like I was invisible, just handed me her clutch with this practiced smile you give to the help. Brandon, though, this asshole actually recognized me. He gets this little smirk on his face, pulls out his wallet and says, "Take good care of it," handing me a $100 bill. I know how rough things have been for you lately. I wanted to shove that bill down his throat. I wanted to tell him that I'd forgotten more about cars than he'd ever know. I wanted to point out that Daddy's money doesn't make you a man. But you know what I did? I took the money. Because I needed it. Because my mom's AC was broken, and she wouldn't let me pay to fix it. But I knew that 100 would cover the parts I needed. That night after my shift, I sat in my car, the same Shelby I'd been so proud of building up from nothing, now showing its age and neglect. I pulled out my phone and looked at Catherine's Instagram. There they were at the same restaurant I just valeted at. The perfect couple with their perfect life and perfect everything. Meanwhile, I had 30 pounds of depression weight on my frame, a cheap uniform reeking of other people's cars, and that $100 bill burning a hole in my pocket. That was my rock bottom. But here's the thing about hitting bottom. Once you're there, you've got nothing left to lose. I drove home that night, walked straight past my mom watching her late-night shows, and into my old bedroom that still had my high school trophies on the wall. I stood there looking in the mirror for what felt like hours. The guy looking back. I didn't recognize him anymore. I hadn't shaved in weeks and had dark circles under my eyes. He looked like a stranger wearing my face. That's when I made the decision. Capital T, capital D. Because sometimes you have to completely break before you can rebuild. And rebuild? That's exactly what I was about to do. That $100 Bill Brandon gave me, it changed everything. But not in the way he intended. The morning after the valet incident, I woke up at 4 a.m. with something different inside me. I walked to my bathroom, grabbed my mom's old digital scale, and faced the music. 242 pounds. I'd put on 47 pounds of pure depression weight in just a few months. I pulled out my phone, deleted every delivery app, unfollowed Catherine and Brandon on everything, and downloaded a calorie tracking app instead. Then I did something I hadn't done since high school football. I put on my old running shoes and went for a run. I made it exactly 6 minutes before I thought my lungs would explode. But here's the thing about rock bottom. You've got nothing but time. No girlfriend to impress. No social life to maintain. No reputation to protect anymore. Just hours and hours to rebuild yourself. So I made a plan. A real one. Not some New Year's resolution type deal. I would wake up at 4:30 a.m., have a protein shake. I learned about proper nutrition from YouTube. Hit the gym by 5 a.m., start my O'Reilly shift at 7 a.m., begin my valet job at 4 p.m., and from 11 p.m. I'd study business and marketing until I couldn't keep my eyes open. Rinse and repeat. Every single day. The first month was hell. My body hurt constantly. Living with my mom at 26 felt like the ultimate failure. The valet job was a constant reminder of everything I'd lost, but I kept looking at that $100 bill I'd pinned on my wall. I kept thinking about Brandon's smirk. I used that anger and humiliation as fuel. By month 3, things started changing. I was down 25 pounds and starting to see muscle definition again. The regular customers at O'Reilly began asking what I was doing differently, but the biggest change was happening in my mind. Working at O'Reilly had this unexpected benefit. I got to talk to every kind of car guy in Chicago, from suburban dads working on weekend projects to serious collectors maintaining their classics. I started noticing patterns in what they complained about, what services they couldn't find, what they wished existed. The high-end guys especially kept bitching about how dealerships like Brandon's family's chain were overcharging for basic work and screwing up the complex stuff. The more I listened, the more I saw a gap in the market. These guys wanted someone who understood both the mechanics and the luxury market. That's when I started looking for a place to set up shop. During one of my valet shifts, I found this massive abandoned warehouse in Wicker Park, right between the wealthy suburbs and downtown. The previous owner had gone bankrupt during COVID. The place was a mess. Broken windows, graffiti everywhere, probably some questionable residents in the corners. But holy shit, the bones were perfect. High ceilings, great location, massive doors that could fit any size vehicle. During my breaks, I'd sit in my car outside that building, running numbers, sketching layouts, planning. The asking price was way out of my league, $400,000, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Then came the breakthrough. One night, I was valeting this beat-up Rolls-Royce Phantom. Yeah, that's a thing. The owner, Mr. Richardson, was this old-school Chicago businessman. His car was making this weird noise, and he'd complained to 3 different dealerships. Spent thousands, but the problem was still there. I heard it, and immediately knew what it was. A classic air suspension issue these models have. I told him my diagnosis. He was skeptical but desperate, so he said I could look at it after my shift if I wanted. I spent 2 hours in that parking lot fixing his car with basic tools from my trunk. When I finished, he was shocked. He started asking about my background and my plans. I told him everything. About the warehouse I wanted to buy, about my vision for a different kind of luxury garage, about how the current market was underserving guys like him. We must have talked for another hour. The next day, he called and wanted to meet at his office. I showed up in my best clothes, which wasn't saying much at that point. My hands were still stained with motor oil despite scrubbing them raw. He had a proposal. He'd help secure the loan for the warehouse, plus $200,000 for renovations and equipment. In return, he wanted 25% of the business and first priority service for his car collection. But here was the catch. I had 3 months to prove I could run a business. I had to create a complete business plan, marketing strategy, everything. Oh, and I had to get back in good standing with the luxury car community. No pressure, right? You know what I did? I grabbed every free business course online I could find. I spent my valet shifts studying the high-end clients, how they talked, what they valued, what made them trust a business. I used my O'Reilly connections to start rebuilding my reputation in the car community and called in favors from every mechanic I'd ever helped. I lost another 20 pounds. I started dressing better. Not fancy, but professional. Clean pressed clothes, even for the valet job. I changed how I talked and how I carried myself. I wasn't pretending to be something I wasn't, but I was becoming the best version of who I could be. 3 months later, I walked into Mr. Richardson's office a different man, physically, mentally, professionally. Everything had changed. I slapped down a 100-page business plan that I'd rewritten 12 times. I had 5 luxury car owners ready to sign maintenance contracts and a complete renovation plan for the warehouse. He read through everything and looked at me for a long moment. Then he opened his desk drawer and pulled out a set of keys, the keys to the warehouse. He'd already bought it. He said he knew after week 2 that I was going to make it happen. He just wanted to see how far I'd push myself. That night, standing in my soon-to-be shop, covered in dust and cobwebs, I finally took that $100 bill down from my wall. Not because I was over it, but because I needed room for the building permit that was going to change everything. Renovating that warehouse was like bringing a dead car back to life. You've got to strip everything down to bare metal before you can rebuild it properly. The first day I walked in as the owner, I found 3 homeless guys living in the corner office and enough pigeons to start a racing team. The roof leaked in 17 different places. The concrete floor was cracked worse than my ex's moral compass. But man, there's something therapeutic about destroying things to rebuild them better. I spent 2 weeks just demolishing interior walls and clearing out decades of industrial crap. Mr. Richardson thought I was crazy for doing the demo work myself, but I needed this. I needed to feel every piece of this place transform under my hands. Remember that business plan I mentioned? It called for 3 months of renovation before opening. We did it in 7 weeks. I'm talking 18-hour days sleeping on a cot in what would become the customer lounge, eating nothing but protein bars and gas station coffee. My mom would bring me clean clothes and actual food, telling me I was working too hard. But she didn't understand. This wasn't work. This was redemption. The floor ended up costing almost $50,000 to do right. Special epoxy coating that could handle everything from oil spills to Bugatti tire marks. The lifts were another $100,000 for the good stuff. None of that cheap hydraulic nonsense that breaks down every other month. Every dollar spent was an investment in proving them wrong. Opening day was nothing fancy. No big ceremony, no ribbon cutting. I just opened the doors at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday with exactly 5 appointments scheduled, all Mr. Richardson's connections. By 8 a.m., I had my first real test. A Rolls-Royce Cullinan rolled in, the owner complaining about a weird noise in the suspension. Other shops had quoted him $15,000 for a complete system replacement. It took me 2 hours to diagnose and fix a loose actuator that cost $300 in parts. The look on his face when I handed him the bill? Priceless. He called 3 friends before he even left the parking lot. That's when things started moving. Word spread through the luxury car community like wildfire. This new shop in Wicker Park, guy who runs it actually knows what he's doing, doesn't bullshit, fair prices for quality work. By week 3, we were booked solid 2 weeks out. I hired my first 2 mechanics, both guys I knew from my Uncle Tom's shop days who'd been wanting to get into high-end work. I trained them myself and made sure they understood my standards. No cutting corners, no overcharging just because the client has money. Then came the game changer. The owner of that Ferrari I mentioned way back, a big shot in the classic car world, brings in his 1962 Ferrari 250 GTE. The previous shop had totally botched the engine rebuild and wanted another $40,000 to fix their mistakes. I spent a week rebuilding that engine myself, staying up till 3 a.m. studying original Ferrari manuals. When I fired it up for the first time, that V12 singing like it just rolled out of Maranello, man, I actually cried. The owner was so happy he featured us in his car club newsletter. Next thing you know, we're getting calls from collectors across the country. 6 months in, I had to hire 3 more mechanics. We built a reputation for being the shop that could fix the impossible problems, the ones other shops, including certain dealership chains, couldn't figure out. We started getting calls from exotic car owners tired of dealing with dealership bullshit. Here's where it gets good. I started noticing a pattern of a lot of complaints, specifically about Wellington Luxury Automobiles, Brandon's daddy's chain. Their service department was slipping. They were charging crazy prices for basic work and messing up complex jobs. Why? Because Brandon had convinced his old man to cut costs on technician training, figuring rich people would pay whatever they charged anyway. 1 year in, we had a 3-month waiting list. We had to start turning down regular cars to focus on exotics and classics. I expanded to the building next door, doubled our workspace, and installed a specialized Ferrari diagnostic system that cost more than my first house would have. Then one day, this familiar McLaren 765 LT pulls up outside, not for service, just parked there while its owner went to the new coffee shop across the street. That volcano orange paint was looking a little dull now. The brake rotors showed heavy wear. I could tell from the sound that it needed a carbon cleaning bad, but the owner hadn't figured out who I was yet. See, I'd stayed pretty low-key. No social media presence, no advertising, all word of mouth. Local business magazines had done some pieces on the shop, but I always declined photos. It wasn't about me, it was about the work. But now, Watching that McLaren sit there and knowing what was coming, man, karma was about to call in her markers. 2 weeks after I saw it outside my shop, that tired-looking McLaren 765 LT finally showed up as a customer. Brandon wasn't driving it, though. He'd sent one of his dealership's porters. Apparently the car was running rough, and their techs couldn't figure out why. The porter handed me the keys without having any idea who I was. I did a full inspection while the porter waited. The car was a mess. Carbon buildup, worn brake pads, transmission fluid that probably hadn't been changed since it left the factory. Classic signs of an owner who cares more about the badge than the machine. I wrote up a full estimate and handed it to the porter. The total came to about $18,000 worth of work needed. The porter called Brandon right there in my office. I could hear Brandon through the phone. "That's ridiculous. Our service department said it just needs a tune-up." It made my day when the porter replied, "Sir, you told me to take it to the best shop in Chicago. This is that shop." Brandon showed up an hour later, probably expecting to throw his weight around. He walked into my office without recognizing me at first. I'd changed a lot in 3 years, gained 30 pounds of muscle, grew a well-maintained beard, and was wearing a tailored suit instead of mechanic's overalls. The moment of recognition, pure gold. His face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds: shock, disbelief, anger, fear, and finally respect, because he knew. One look around my shop told him everything he needed to know. 6 high-end cars being worked on, 3 Ferrari certificates on the wall, and a waiting list so long we had to stop taking new clients. "How?" he started to ask. "Hard work," I cut him off. "Something daddy's money can't buy." He tried to save face by starting to talk about how we should collaborate. His dealership chain was struggling. Turned out cutting corners on service wasn't such a great long-term strategy. But I wasn't interested in helping the guy who took everything from me. "Your car will be ready in 2 weeks, I told him. "Standard payment terms, 50% up front." The best part? He paid. He had no choice, really. His reputation was on the line, and his dealership couldn't fix the car properly. But that was just the appetizer. The main course came about a month later when I got an interesting email. Wellington Luxury Automobiles was looking to sell some of their locations. Turns out their service department's reputation had tanked so bad, they were losing millions. High-end clients were leaving in droves, many of them coming to us. Remember Mr. Richardson, my mentor and investor? Turns out he sits on the board of several banks that held the Wellington family's business loans. One phone call from him, and suddenly those loans were being reviewed closely. The real cherry on top? Catherine showed up at my shop unannounced one afternoon. She looked different. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by regular retail stuff. That perfect rich girl polish had faded. Turned out Brandon's family's financial troubles had hit home. No more unlimited credit cards, no more luxury shopping sprees. "I made a mistake," she said, standing in my office. The same office where I'd once dreamed of building something great. "I never should have left. You were the real thing, and I was too blind to see it." Just then, Olivia walked in. My girlfriend of 2 years, former professional race car driver who now runs her own performance parts manufacturing company. She's everything Catherine pretended to be: smart, driven, genuine. The look on Catherine's face when Olivia kissed me hello, better than any revenge I could have planned. "The mistake wasn't leaving," I told Catherine. "The mistake was thinking I needed you to succeed." Today, my shop is the go-to place for exotic cars in the Midwest. We've got a 6-month waiting list, 3 locations, and a reputation for excellence that money can't buy. Brandon's family had to sell most of their dealerships. Karma's a bitch when you build your success on other people's failure. Last I heard, he's working as a used car salesman in Minneapolis. Catherine? She's still with him, but not by choice. Turns out, when you build your whole life around someone else's money, it's hard to walk away when that money disappears. Her Instagram these days is all "blessed with what matters" posts. You know the kind. The ones people make when they're trying to convince themselves they're happy. As for me, I just signed a deal to open 2 more locations. Olivia and I are getting married next spring, having the ceremony in the first warehouse I renovated. Mr. Richardson's going to be my best man. That $100 bill Brandon gave me when I was a valet? It's framed in my office, right next to last year's Entrepreneur of the Year award. Sometimes I think about that night, as a valet, watching them walk into that restaurant like they owned the world. Everything I've built since then, it's not about revenge. It's about proving that real success comes from genuine passion, hard work, and never letting someone else define your worth. The empire I built? It's not built on family connections or trust funds. It's built on stripped knuckles, late nights, and a genuine love for what I do, and that's something no one can ever take away.